Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Thursday morning Bible study. Ready to just jump in? Guess so. So we last week, can you see the screen now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So last week, you remember we started chapter 10 of the Gospel of John, and we went through the image of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, and we talked about the sheep following the voice of their shepherd and running away from the voice of strangers, and sort of the imagery of us following Jesus because we hear his voice and we follow it, and we do not follow the voice of strangers. He is the Good Shepherd because he is willing to lay down his life for the sheep, that nobody takes his life from him, but he lays it down on his own because he has the power to lay it down and to take it up again. And then that continued to create division among the Jews to whom he was speaking. Any questions about that first part?
No.
All right, well then let's continue with chapter 10, where it is the Feast of the Dedication, verse 22. Who would like to read?
I'll read.
Okay.
Since no one else answered. Okay. Feast of the Dedication. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Feast of the Dedication. The Feast of the Dedication was then taking place in Jerusalem. It was winter. And Jesus walked about in the temple area on the portico of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." Jesus answered them, "I told you, and you do not believe. The works I do in my Father's name testify to me. But you do not believe because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can take them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one can take them out of the Father's hand. The Father and I are one."
Okay. Why don't we stop there?
Stop there? Okay.
Yep. So we'll just see if we can understand what Jesus is trying to say to folks. So any first impressions about Jesus's little speech here?
What's the portico of Simon? What is that?
The portico of Solomon.
Solomon.
It's a part of the temple. You know, it's just like a porch, you know, a section of it.
Yeah.
And I think apparently it's on the east side of the temple because in the wintertime the wind and the rain come from the west or something like that. I can't remember, but it has to do with the weather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Well, maybe it would have been further into the temple because the Feast of the Dedication is Hanukkah, the lighting of the candles.
Yep.
So maybe that's where he was walking. It wasn't as windy or whatever. I don't know how the candles work, but that was the miracle too, that they only had oil for one day, but the candles lasted, was it 8 days, I think?
Right.
But that the wind wouldn't blow the candles out, maybe?
That was, okay, so the Feast of the Dedication is, as Esther said, the Feast of Hanukkah. And do you remember what the dedication is referring to? What event happened?
About the Maccabees.
Well,
It's
the Maccabees, yeah.
And what did the Maccabees do?
They ruined it. They ruined it. It was Judas. Wasn't it Judas?
Well, no, they don't
Ruined it.
ruin the temple. What did
No,
they,
they defeated, who was it? The Syrians?
the Greeks?
The Greeks. Okay. I know it was something
Did
about,
they ruin or they defiled it?
Yeah, so
What
remember
happened?
the Greeks conquered Israel before the Romans did. And when they came and conquered it, they remember the statue of Antiochus
right,
in the
right.
temple as a god, which is a defilement of the temple.
Mhm.
And
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Okay.
created a big revolution. And uh, they're called the Maccabees, which I think means the hammer or something like that. They all flee to the hill country, and then they group and they go and battle the Greeks and they throw them out. So there's a revolution, and they take back the temple, and so they have to rededicate the temple because it was
Defiled.
defiled. All right, and as Esther pointed out, it's usually a week-long feast, and they only had enough oil in the candle for one day, and yet the candle burned for the 8
For 8 days.
And so that's how you get the Feast of Hanukkah, and the lighting of the candle each day of Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Hanukkah a major feast in Judaism?
Yes.
Not really.
It's not?
Nah,
It
it's
comes
not that.
around Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it became a big deal in the West,
Ah,
because the
okay.
Jewish parents wanted to have their kids had something to celebrate when all the Christian kids were celebrating Christmas.
Oh, okay.
So they pull Hanukkah out as the feast to do it. I mean, it was an important feast, but it wasn't like the highest holidays are Yom Kippur,
Yom Kippur.
Rosh Hashanah, and
Yeah.
Passover. Those are, and even Shavuot, it would be bigger than Hanukkah.
Oh, okay.
But the three biggest are Rosh Hashanah, which is New
Yeah.
Year.
But I had started, but I did kind of have oh, right. But
Yeah.
I did kind of have a question going into how long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you're not the Messiah, tell us plainly. So I wanted to question that because it sounded like he had other conversations, or maybe they were hearing this, or I mean, why would they say that to him? Like, because they've been wondering, and with everything going on.
Well, that would have been one of my first questions as you're kind of getting your first impression. Does the conversation sound at all familiar to you?
Yeah.
I think it comes from the conversations they've been having before.
Yeah.
I mean, with the blind man, and it just seems like it's just a reoccurrence. So they don't went through all this. To me, it's like they want him to come out and tell them who he is. And he's saying no. To me,
Is he saying no?
To me, he's saying,
At verse 25.
No, to me,
he's
saying he proved himself. Why he got to keep proving himself?
Right. Yeah.
Them who he is, and they don't believe him.
Right, they don't believe.
Right. Right. And the works that he's done. Right. I think it almost sounds like, once again, they're kind of trying to trap him to accuse him of blasphemy.
Yeah. Yes, I believe that. But he never denies it though. That's beyond verse 30, but
Right.
Jesus never denies who he is. But they still struggling with it. And just like today, I think we struggle with our convictions. I'm talking about as a people, we struggle with our convictions because what is the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word I'm looking for. Because of corruption. You know who Jesus is in your life. If you're a Christian, you know who he is. You know what to believe in. But because you want to satisfy those are the convictions, but you want to satisfy your own destruction in your own life, which you really don't know is destruction until it happens. but you struggle with that. You
Oh,
struggle with your convictions.
okay. I understand now.
Do
Okay.
you
Right, right,
understand what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
it.
I get
Yeah.
it too. Always questioning and it's like, well, Lord's already told you what you need to do, but you don't want to hear it.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
even though we read over and over again about his works, there's a song that says, let the work I've done speak for me. We ourselves as a people still question Jesus today.
Yeah.
We can read the Bible 1,000 times and read those stories and the work he's done, and we still question him, the same as these people do.
So it's not Jesus that makes, we know, it's like you just said about the laws and what we're supposed to follow. So it's not Jesus who makes us doubt. It's not Jesus who's making the Sanhedrin and all the other Jews that are questioning them. We make our own selves doubt by our own prejudices. Whatever our prejudices are, sometimes we make our own self doubt.
Yes, I agree with you.
Okay.
That's the struggle of the ages.
Yeah,
We know better, but we don't do better. We want to
exactly.
keep up with the Joneses and do what's popular instead of following the straight and narrow. And that's been forever. And will
So,
continue to be forever.
so what I'm hearing is that Jesus have shown us miracle after miracle, even within our own lives. And when something new comes up, we still don't believe that's him, or we still question, is he there?
We doubt. We always doubt.
Yes. Even though he's done so much for us in the past. Even though we can go back and see the miracles that he's done in our lives, the next hurdle we go through, we still want him to tell us this question. Ask this question: how long are you going to keep us in suspense? And how many times have we asked that ourselves? This is not just their question, as you all are saying. This is also our question today. How long are you going to keep us in suspense? And I say that every day. How long am I going to get through this back issue so I can get back to normal?
Mhm.
So y'all are right. You're right on point to me.
And another one that we face, D, in our lives at our age, probably every week we know somebody that has passed away or died. But we ourselves have witnessed what God has done for us when a loved one has died in our lives, and the pain is so deep and so powerful that we can only relay what God has done to us when we are close to someone else who has lost somebody.
Yeah.
But this is why we say we offer our condolences. We say so many things, different things to people who have lost loved ones. But we ourselves have believed what God has done for us in the same situation. And we're trying to relay this to someone else. And sometimes people say, I don't think I'll ever get through this. I know I won't ever get through this.
Oh my
And
God.
you're constantly saying, it's going to be all right in so many different ways.
But that's when those warriors,
you're making me cry.
yes, that's when those warriors come into your life. That's why it's important to be associated with people who have that faith, because I can tell you the people that surrounded me, it was one of the most powerful things that I have ever witnessed. You have to be associated with people who believe in Jesus Christ. And this church family that I'm speaking to right now, and I just want to thank you all for what you did, for keeping me in your prayers and calling me and making me feel like there's a family there that's surrounding you and things are going to be okay. That's a very powerful thing.
And Loretta, you said something. Okay, my son died. My only child, my only son died in 2000, and I remember sitting in St. Bernardine's and at the funeral. I think it was the most beautiful funeral I ever been to in my life. Where and then I felt that I was in so much pain that I felt like God had lifted me. I felt lifted for a time. I mean, not just for a day. I was lifted for weeks. I remember being like my heart was caressed, and then one day he just set me down and said, "You're okay now." And I felt I even felt the spirit leave me and felt like a little lost there and now I felt like I'm on my own. But to tell you this story is that I went to another funeral where a lady lost her son. And I was trying to do what Loretta said, trying to explain to her, understand what she is going through. I know, trying to share my experience. And that lady said to me, I don't want to hear this. This is my only child. I don't want to hear this. My son is gone, and I don't want to hear, that what God has to do. And, it made me feel, she wasn't ready to hear anything about faith, about God, anything. So sometimes, God gives us an experience, but maybe, people just aren't ready. And these people right here, maybe they just aren't ready.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I've learned, Dee, is no matter what's going on, you can never tell someone, I know what you're going through.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because you don't.
Seriously different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, maybe
It's just for everyone. Huh?
I think you're right, Regina. I mean, it was my experience, and I was, I was trying to comfort her, but like you just said very well, her experience and my experience may be different. I mean, the way she was feeling about the loss of her son, and the way I was feeling about the loss of mine, and also my faith, and her faith,
Right.
it was different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in
So,
answering Father's question, I think Jesus is telling them all along, hey, I am the one. My Father and I are
Yeah.
one. He's telling him over
Yeah.
and over. I told
yeah,
you,
I mean, that's what
believe me.
I was going to say. I mean, if you really just look at this little passage, that's why I just wanted to stop for this,
Yeah.
is, you've heard this before, the works I do, right?
Speak for me.
Side to me, right?
Yeah.
My sheep hear my voice.
Right.
I know them and they follow me, and the Father and I are one.
You
Right?
just said that in the last.
Yep. So
That
this isn't new, but they keep challenging him. So he keeps going over and over and over again. Okay, so let's see how they respond to this round. Who was
Oh, 30.
Yeah, 31.
Oh, 31. Okay. The Jews again picked up rocks to stone him. Jesus answered them, I have shown you many good works from my Father. For which of these are you trying to stone me? The Jews answered him, we are not stoning you for good work, but for blasphemy.
Mhm.
Keep going.
I don't hear anything.
Yeah. Did we lose Loretta?
Loretta, I muted you. Sorry.
Okay, I'll start again.
Okay.
31.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. The Jews again picked up rocks to stone him. Jesus answered them, I have shown you many good works from my Father. For which of these are you trying to stone me? The Jews answered him, we are not stoning you for a good work, but for blasphemy. You, a man, are making yourself God. Jesus answered them, it is not written in your law, I said, you are gods. If it calls them gods to whom the word of God came and scripture cannot be set aside, can you say that the one whom the Father has consecrated and sent into the world blasphemes because I said, I am the Son of God? If I do not perform my Father's works, do not believe me. But if I perform them, Even if you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may realize and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Then they tried again to arrest him, but he escaped from their power. He went back across the Jordan to the place where John first baptized, and there he remained. Many came to him and said, John performed no sign, but everything John said about this man was true. And many there began to believe in him.
All right. First impressions.
Awesome. Again, he told them who he was.
Yeah.
And they still don't believe it.
And
He's a little face.
Yeah,
yeah.
and there it is, because they want to accuse him of blasphemy straight up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they wanted him to say it so that they could say, oh, well, he said it. But he's already been doing the work, so yeah. It's a SOS, same old song.
They're already saying, crucify him, crucify him.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Father Rich, I have a question. I think I read something where he says, Jesus says, is it not written in your law? I said, you are God's. What was that reference to when God said man was just below the angels, or was it something about the prophets? I don't remember exactly. When he said, you
yeah,
are God's.
The commentaries that I have read say that that's a reference to the time of the judges. So remember, before Israel had a king, they had judges that were in charge of, each community. And at some point, they are referred to as gods because I guess of their, they represented God. Now remember, it's gods with a small g.
Yes.
Not
Okay.
the God. But that's what I have read, that it's really a reference to the judges were called gods because they sort of represented and stood in the place of God over the community over which they were a judge. And so basically Jesus is saying, well, if you can call the judges God, if scripture can do that, then how much more can you call me? This I can say the Son of God because I perform the works of my Father.
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question, Esther, because I was rereading that and I'm sitting there going, I'm a little confused about what this is saying. But now you explained it, I'm okay. All right, now
it's a little convoluted, and again, this is scripture's scholar's best bet as to what's being referred to here, because of the psalm that Esther is talking about says that you are a little less than the angels. Who are you, man, that God created you, that God regards you, and he created you a little less lower than the angels. So in that psalm, they're not really being referred to as gods. I mean, human beings aren't being referred to as gods because we're still a little less than the angels, and the angels themselves are less than God.
okay. Michael, what are you thinking? I haven't heard from you today. What are you thinking?
I'm digesting, and to me, it seems like that they're just stuck in what they believe. The Jewish authorities. To me, if they want him to say plainly that he is God, and just so that they can be justified in stoning him and getting rid of him. But I just think that their refusal to believe is that they're just stuck in their own way of thinking. And Jesus had these conversations many times over and over, like we read in the previous chapters. And I think they're just stuck in their way of how the Messiah should come in. in their mind what he should look like. But what stuck out to me is that he told them down here in 38, but if I perform the works and you do not believe me, believe the works so that you may realize and understand that the Father is in me. So even if you're stuck in your own mind and your own ways, believe the works that I do, at least do that. But that back and forth conflict just tells me, or says to me, that they're just stuck in their own way of thinking.
Right. Okay.
Okay, one thing to point out, because this is a theme that does run through Jesus's conflict with the authorities, is their accusation is pretty much summarized here. You, a man, are making yourself God. Okay. And what is Jesus's response, sort of generally? You don't have to read it from the thing, but is Jesus making himself God?
No,
He didn't
no,
deny it.
he never says that.
He
No,
never
he
said it.
He said it's coming from the Father.
Right.
God makes him
Yes.
God. Yeah. So that
Can you repeat that, please? I didn't hear that.
so the question is Jesus making himself God?
Okay.
And the response is no, God makes himself God.
Right.
He's
It comes from the Father,
Right.
not from himself.
Everything Jesus does comes from the Father. He's
So
not.
Jesus doesn't deny that he's God. He
Right.
denies that he makes himself God.
Right.
He does not make himself God. God makes him a God.
You know what puzzles me even today? What puzzles me, and it bothers me even today, with all the crime that we got going on here in the city and everywhere else. When someone upsets someone or doesn't like their politics or whatever is going on today, why do we want to kill them? Why can't we just remove ourselves from their, from their, air, from their space?
Why do you think?
I don't. I can't wrap my head around it. The thing.
Why would you want to kill anybody?
They wants to kill a person to get them out of their, thinking they're getting them out of their lives.
Right. That's
no
why would you? I mean, I'm not saying that you D or any of us, but why would a person who is that far out, what would they think? Why would they think that it's a good thing to kill an opponent?
That is why I'm asking the
To
question.
eliminate the threat.
Eliminate them, yeah.
You
Right,
want
the
to
opponent is
eliminate
a
the
threat.
threat.
They see the opponent as a threat. Usually
Yes.
they see them as a threat to their own power.
Right.
And so their thinking is, if I can eliminate this threat, I will retain my power.
Isn't that what happened to Nancy Pelosi recently?
And that's what's happening. I mean, even if even if you don't put killing in it, but more and more political violence is the idea that we feel so threatened by our opponents that we're willing to fight them with violence and not just with reason.
But Father, nowadays people are killing people they don't even know. They don't have a clue who they are, let alone be against them. This big man that went into school and killed all those people. I mean, man driving up the street, you're afraid for your life. You used to feel safe driving.
I mean, not all killings is a motivation, but even that, there you could see there's a bit of a power play, even with mass murderers.
Yeah, yes.
Often they find that these are people who have been abused or bullied or whatever, which and then they go and they commit mass murder as a sign that they have power. It's not a good power, but they have power. They have the power to kill people. So a lot of it is based on that, and certainly in the four Gospels, it's pretty clear that one of the main reasons that the religious authorities want to kill Jesus is that he's a threat to their power. And Rome ends up killing him because Rome could care less, but Rome doesn't tolerate anybody who challenges, who might be a a rabble rouser. So, that Rome probably, Pilate probably had no problem getting rid of Jesus. Who needed him? Because you just don't need upstarts if they're a threat to your power.
To I don't know. It just bothers me just to eradicate one of God's children. It just I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's devastating. I mean, it's just
Yes.
unbelievable that we've come to that point.
Yes, I mean, I don't care whether it's on the corner, it's January the 6th issues, it's Nancy Pelosi's husband. People are going crazy. Everybody wants to eliminate a person that they feel threatened by. But in the meantime, what good does it do them? This guy is, they got this guy, or the kids, the guy that shoot the children, they killed him, and then everybody suffers. The people families who lost, the people who, even the person who commits the crime, their families at a loss. Sometimes their families are ostracized because they got a family member who did this horrible thing. It's just horrible.
I have a question.
Do you know what I found, Dee? We use the word amoral, and I think some of my thoughts come from, teaching. So many people in the world today are not Christian, or not that they're just not Christian, they just simply have no belief. And that means they have no moral compass. There's nothing in them, and no one's taught them, and they haven't absorbed it from people around them. There is no right or wrong. It's just, it doesn't matter. So it's not just a lack of respect for life. They have no moral compass. So killing someone doesn't mean anything to them. And I think that's part of why I love teaching, high school, these young people, because you can see that working in them. And I had so many eureka moments. It's like when some kid, you're talking 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and they get it all of a sudden. Oh yeah, because they weren't raised the way most of us were raised. And that's what's coming, and that's what's manifesting itself, I think, in the world today. And there are not enough people with a moral compass trying to help other people see that there is a right or wrong. It does make a difference that your actions are far reaching. So I think that has a lot to do with, and I understand your struggle, because I say the same thing. Things happen. I just can't wrap my head around that.
Right.
But it's like,
I know what you're saying,
no moral compass.
I know what you're saying, but it's still mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. It is.
Michael,
and that's why I always say, I know God is still on the throne. Yeah, that's what moves me through.
Michael,
and still digesting this. I kind of went back to verse 24, but knowing the conflicts again throughout all that we've read so far, what if Jesus did tell them plainly that I am God? Do you think that they would have believed him if he said it plainly, or do you think they would have still been adamant and still wanted to kill him? That's
I
kind of
think
my
they would have
question.
killed him quicker.
They would have killed him.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have made a difference if he told them plainly or not, you think?
I think his
That
death
would be
would have been
blasphemy.
quicker.
I think they would have killed him on the spot.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just blasphemous.
I mean, I think from this passage, that's the dynamic that's going on. So the Father and I are one is what sets them up to pick up the rocks.
Yes.
And he says, well, why are you going to stone me? And they say, because you are making yourself God. I don't think there's any doubt in their mind about what's going on. And that's the whole point, is they are threatened by his claim, and they want to do away with him because of that.
And these are people of faith. Okay, again, these are people of faith. And people of faith, even today, are doing violence.
I was going to say that, I mean, our church history. I mean, how many times during the history of our own church that popes have called for the elimination, the extermination of people who threaten the faith? What do you think the Crusades were all about?
Right. Yeah. Yes, they have started wars.
That was a
Just
church.
get your hands on a copy of Document of Discovery. It's so century. Document of Discovery. Check it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, the church itself is, you know, as sinful in that regard. So that, you know, I always want to try to remind people, don't think you're all that much better than the leaders, Jewish, you know, the Jewish leaders of Jesus' time.
Yeah.
You know, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and you know, we kept saying that nothing has changed. That's why we're still reading these scriptures. You know, if we were all over this, we wouldn't have to read the scripture. We'd already have arrived. But the fact is, we keep going over the same thing over and over again, and we never seem to get much better. But Jesus just keeps working at us. He keeps responding to us. And then at the end, again, another phrase that is very typical John and very important. And many there began to believe in him.
Yeah.
And why do I say that phrase is significant? Anybody want to conjecture why many began to believe in him is a significant phrase for St. John?
Well, I think because they heard what John had said. And everything, and the sentence we said, it said everything about this man was true. Everything that he did prior, you know, that John said prior to his coming, and then what John said and what Jesus did started to make sense.
How about if I pointed out and said the most significant word in that statement is began?
Began.
Yeah.
Why is this significant in John? Many the other gospel writers don't do that. They just say, and he followed him along the way, or he believed in him, you know, or Jesus says, your faith has saved you, or something like that. John is the only one who uses this phrase several times. Many began to believe in him.
So there was a spark that started. A match was lit. And he's letting us know that.
And what does that say? What does that tell you about John's idea of what faith is?
You don't just get it. It has to start somewhere, but you just don't always get it. You begin to believe in something, and as you move along, if you progress, it gets better. I mean, you have more evidence of whatever it is you need. But
it takes some convincing.
Yeah. John, faith is not an on or off switch.
Right.
Okay? It's a process. So you begin to believe in him, because as you continue your faith journey, you will believe more and more in him until you finally believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you know, the light of the world, the Word of God, you know, all of those titles. It will take time for you to grasp all of that.
You know, and you're so right about that, because you know, if you go back to where they said, "Why don't you just tell us who you are?" I remember saying that. I said, "Why don't you just tell me what you want me to do? Why must I go through all this?" I actually, you know, it just every time I read these scriptures, I see me in here. I see these questions that they're asking that I already asked too. It's like you just said, Father, there's nothing new. I ask the same question. You know, when I'm going through something, I say, you want me to do this? Why don't you just tell me what you want me to do? You want me to go over there? Just tell me you want me to go over there. Why did I go through all of this process?
It's a process.
Yes.
And was it at the wedding at Cana? We've kind of seen this before, where his apostles, his disciples began to believe. Was that back at the wedding?
That's exactly how the story. Let's flip let's go down there real fast. It's chapter 2. Okay, the wedding at Cana. And Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs in Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. Okay?
Mhm.
And it
That word again, believe. Begin.
comes in other places. So that's it's just important to realize for St. John, faith is a process, and it does have a beginning. So many of the Samaritans in that town began to believe in him. See, that was after the Samaritan woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you got to start somewhere, but you generally don't get it all at once. It just takes time.
Right.
And so that's a very important phrase for St. John, and you don't really see that in the other gospels.
Right.
They either, you're kind of either put your faith in Jesus or you don't. But for John is much more nuanced, because John's been around a lot longer than those other gospel writers, and he's really seen, how faith takes time. So, okay, well, why don't we move to one of the most famous stories, and the raising of Lazarus.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else want to read?
I'll read.
Okay.
The raising of Lazarus. Now a man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Master, the one you love is ill. When Jesus heard this, he said, This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, Let us go back to Judea. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of the world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. He said this and then told them, Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I am going to awaken him. So the disciples said to him, Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved. But Jesus was talking about his death while they thought that he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I am not there, that you may believe. I go to him. So Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, I can't see that word over there. Okay, let us also go to die with him.
Okay, let's stop there. First impressions.
See the light and darkness again.
Okay, light and dark. Yep.
This story is a little bit different than a couple of the others.
How's it different?
Well, is that, does he, I don't know, we haven't got to that part yet, I guess, where he talks to his sisters. But this
Right,
is,
yeah, no, let's just talk this is the preamble, right? The
Okay.
prologue.
All right.
for the story. So
Okay, that's where. Okay. I was a little ahead of the story. Okay.
Well, he calls himself the Son of God in this first paragraph. But
okay.
it is for the glory of God that the Son of God may be glorified through it. So he's taking a stand here about who he is.
Okay.
Same thing, Gretchen. I was looking at and comparing it to the blind man, because the same reference was made that whatever happened, this great work would be for the glory of God.
Okay.
And so this would be another example, because it seems like in the other passages, it's not, well, no, I don't think it is, but it's not specified that Jesus has made up his mind, because Martha and Mary get very upset with Jesus because he doesn't come right away. But in this version, it looks like Jesus already knows what he's going to do. He's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. So I'm not going to rush back, even though I know he's dying, because I'm going to raise him for the glory of God. But I don't remember really seeing this in the other passages.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, Esther. It seems a little bit different.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Father, is that he's aware that they don't understand what he's talking about, and
Right.
he makes it clear that he is not sleeping, he is dead. You know, he's making it clear to them so that they will know what he's talking about.
Right. Right.
Well, before I start chiming in, any other thoughts? There's a lot in this, just little prologue.
And then he talks about the 12 hours in a day. So he's, like Michael said, is he dividing the day between day and night? I mean, I was thinking, is it 12 daylight hours or and 12 nighttime hours? This is interesting.
He's
But
still
I was
teaching
gonna
them
say,
about.
it seems like one thing for sure, that Lazarus is definitely a friend of his.
Okay.
Again, with the light and darkness, I mean, it's like, it's a beautiful thing. Again, he's teaching them still as they go along about who he is, because he said, if one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world, which it would be Jesus talking
Right.
to
That's
them
what
as
I
the
was
light of the
thinking,
world.
Michael. Yeah.
And
He's
so,
the light. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, and I think he said something about the darkness.
But I see,
Sorry, go ahead.
let me see, I think it's verse 12. So
Yes.
the disciples said to him, Master, if he's asleep, he will be saved. But Jesus was talking about his death while they thought that he meant ordinary sleep. I'm kind of questioning, why wasn't he more direct or telling them forthright that, yeah, I know he's dead, but I'm gonna wake him up. But he used the word sleep.
Yes.
Why did he use the word sleep instead of really telling them that he was dead?
Gretchen, Jesus does that. He's done
all
that
the time.
He don't come out. Look at. Why don't you just come out and tell them what it is, so they're gonna be confused.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
So we can be sitting here debating it.
But you know, I've
don't.
always debated that the use of the word sleep, because in the Hebrew scripture, these people are dying, but it always talks about them falling into this sleep, which is really death. So this word has been used in the Hebrew scripture often, that sleep is really death.
Well, if that was the case, Esther, you know, I'm like, then they should have gotten it, but they don't. They don't.
No,
They don't. They didn't get it. I mean, he was dead. He was thinking that it was ordinary sleep, just like you said.
They were all Hebrews,
right?
So they should be familiar with the language.
Exactly. So I don't know that.
We'll come back.
I just wanted to say the one word that jumped out to me and the whole passage area along the lines of what Michael was saying was fear. And after the disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you and you want to go back there, that word fear just just stuck in my head because of course the disciples tried to stop him, and that Jesus assured them that the time for his death had not come yet.
Okay. All right. Well, let's kind of look at all of that. There's because it's interesting. I'm a bit surprised that some of you feel this is unfamiliar to you because this certainly has always been in the scripture. And even when we read this story during Lent, it's the 5th Sunday of Lent for cycle A, year A. This part of the story is included in it, so it is read at Mass. But maybe it's because everybody rushes to focus on the raising of Lazarus that we don't pay attention to how John sets up the story, which I think is very important. So first of all, the first thing to pull out is Lazarus, Mary, and Martha living in Bethany, right?
Mhm.
Is that consistent with the other Gospels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, does anybody remember the story in particular that the Gospel of Luke tells us?
No, but it's a little bit different.
All I remember is that Martha and Mary were running towards Jesus when he was coming back. And, why didn't you come?
Well, that's this gospel, but I mean, we're doing that. We're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
But remember, the Gospel of Luke is when Jesus goes and visits
Right.
Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And remember, Mary is sitting at his
Yeah, and the feet, right.
serving, and
She's-
all of
she's
that.
gotten the better part. Yeah.
So, that we other gospel writers have attested to this little family of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. And I mean, that's important because, we always want to see how the gospel writers kind of support each other. Later in this story, in this gospel, you're going to hear them having a dinner with Mary and Martha, and it's not the same thing that the way Luke tells it, but you're going to see elements of that same thing. Mary, now this is the only gospel that associates the woman who uses the perfume and dries his feet with her hair.
Yeah.
In the other gospel, that's actually a woman of ill repute who does that. But John associates this with Mary, the sister of Lazarus and Martha. That woman, that sinful woman, wrongly gets associated with another Mary. And who is that?
His mother.
Oh, no,
Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene.
yeah.
Okay? Mary Magdalene gets associated with the sinful woman who perfumes his feet and dries them with her hair. There's absolutely no evidence to associate that woman with Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, and that's all confused. Everybody's confused with that too. They lump all three of these women together.
Yeah, a lot of Marys going on. But John at least associates that woman with Mary. Now remember, when John tells the story, it's not a sinful woman who is anointing his feet. Okay, so we have Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. They live in Bethany, which is a walking distance from Jerusalem. If you're in Bethany, if you're up on the hill, you can just look over and you see Jerusalem right there. So it's not far. And we have, again, all the other gospels attest to the fact that these are three characters that we know: Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Okay, so he gets ill, and the sisters send word to him that the one you love is ill. And then Jesus says this illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God. And Esther is right on point when she likens this to the man born blind. Remember what the question was for the man born blind? Rabbi, was this man born in sin? Or is it his sin, or was it the sin of others, right, that caused him to be blind? And Jesus says it has nothing to do with sin. he was born blind so that God's glory may shine through him. All right. So here's another parallel, that what would be considered bad news occurs because God is going to use it to declare good news. Does that make sense to you? Did I lose you?
No, it makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense.
I muted everybody.
Oh, okay.
I tried to unmute.
Is it true that this illness is not going to end in death?
Well, as far as we know, it's true. But we,
It's not going to ultimately end.
It's not gonna alter, right? I was going to say that he's gonna die, but then
But death is going to occur.
right. But not this
and-
particular time.
And maybe that's why they got confused, because Jesus said the illness is not going to end in death. And then a little bit later, he says Lazarus is dead. So,
Yeah.
you know,
He
I
already
think
knew
the
it.
disciples a little break here.
Right.
You know, because he says it's not going to end in death. And then he later says Lazarus is asleep. So if Jesus said it wasn't going to end in death, then sleep must be ordinary sleep.
I give the disciples a break all the time. Just like Gretchen says, Jesus confuses the heck out of these people.
Yeah. So
Like, because they hang around him, they should know him and know what he says. No, I think he does this on purpose.
well, the key is that it's not going to end in death. It's going to move through death, but it's not
Yeah.
going to end in death. All right. So, you know, this is going to occur so that God, for the glory of God, and so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, one of my favorite lines. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard the news that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Now, why is that a sign that he loves them? If they're calling him and say, "Come help," and he loves them, so he remains there for 2 more days. Why is that a sign?
He knew what he had to do.
I'm sorry, there's some noise I can't hear the
Yeah,
question.
Gina, you kind of,
Yeah, I do.
okay. Yeah, you sound a little better.
Can you repeat the question?
All right. Why is Jesus's decision to remain for 2 days a sign that he loves Martha and her sister and Lazarus? If he loved them,
Well, he already knew.
left
He
right
already
away.
knew. I'm
Did he
sorry.
already know what he was going to do?
Okay, and how is that a sign
I'm
for
not unmute.
love?
That's not a sign for me. I'd be mad too. I mean, I sent for him and he takes 2 days to come.
For me either.
That wouldn't tell me
Nah.
he loved me.
Or
They're
maybe because it
agonizing.
took him 2 days to come, he decided to stay there 2 extra days to show that he cared.
Right, but his marching orders come from God, so he had to wait for him, I believe. It's not something that he does on his own. He does it through his Father.
Yeah, Garnetta, the thing is that I try to put myself in where they are. We know the story, you know, and they don't know the story, a whole piece right now. All they know in their hearts is that their brother had died. Jesus, as far as we know, as we've read, this is their family. Jesus is more like family to them. And they know he does miracles. They believe in him. And yet, he doesn't come for 2 days. They know that he can do something. They don't know he can raise the man from the dead, but they know he can do something. So for him to stay away for 2 days, that would piss me off really, really bad. I'm just
I
telling
was getting ready to say, the longer you wait for someone to show up to comfort you, the more maybe you think about how the person doesn't care.
Right.
Well,
So
you know
why is Jesus's delay an act of love?
You know what?
Well, he already knew he was dead. I mean, by raising Lazarus to life, that's evidence of his unity with the Father.
And so
Well, you know what? But
Go
you know
ahead.
what? When I started reading this, I wasn't thinking it so much from the side of Mary and Martha. That the scriptures tell us Jesus loved Martha and Mary. He already knew that Lazarus was going to die. He was ill, so maybe he needed to give Lazarus time to die. But because he loved them so much, he was going to use Lazarus, even though it was for the glory of God, and bring him back to life because he loved Martha and Mary so much. He was
And
going to.
there, and maybe other witnesses. He wanted more witnesses
For the
to
glory of
see
God.
the grace of God.
And I think that your points are there, but I think Robert's question, how did he show? Going early, Esther, you said, going early when they called, it would not have um, the act. What he needed to do would not be a sign that would glorify God. Is what you said, Esther.
Right. But the bottom line is because he was bringing Lazarus back, showed his love for Martha and Mary and Lazarus.
But they don't know this at the
They
time.
don't know this. That's why I said I wasn't looking at it from Martha and Mary's perspective. I'm looking at it from what Jesus is going to do for them, that he loved them so much that he was going to bring Lazarus back from the dead.
You know, and that was, Father, great question. How did Jesus show his love for them? By waiting. But you know, if I'm in that sick bed and I'm praying to Jesus, and he is taking all this time, and then the doctors tell the family, y'all better hurry up and come to the hospital because you only got certain, I'm still mad.
Wait a minute. Could it have been Jesus was doing something at that particular time? He could have been involved in something that was just as important. At that time, he knew he was going to rise him up from the dead. But he had to take care of what he had to take care of for those 2 days.
And
All
you
right.
and you
Let me
told
let me
Right.
just kind of put it out there so we can. I want to just finish this prologue before the end of our time together, so that we can go into the rest of the story next time. But now got to put it in context, right? So you're all getting it there, but I think you just need to put it a little bit. It's a little simpler than a lot of the complications. So Jesus knows that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead,
Yeah.
and that by raising Lazarus from the dead, he is going to show the glory of God and the glory of the Son of God through it. Correct?
Yeah.
That? So if he leaves right away and he gets there before Lazarus dies,
Okay.
and what's he going to do? What's he expected to do?
Nothing.
Saving.
he's expected to do something. That's what they
Expected
call
to
it.
heal him.
He would be
Expected
expected
to
to
heal
heal
him.
him.
Right.
And Jesus just does. Jesus has been healing people, and that hasn't impressed everybody.
Right.
So this is going to be the ultimate act. That if you don't get it after this, you're just not going to get it,
Right.
because Jesus is going to raise Lazarus from the dead, and that's going to show them the glory of God. And he loves Martha and Mary so much that he wants them to see this. He wants them to see the power of God to raise someone from the dead. And if he simply goes right away and heals Lazarus, that will not make as big of an impact on them as if he raises him from the dead. Okay, so the way St. John tells it is he stays 2 days because he loves Martha and her sister and Lazarus, right? Read it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So therefore, right? When he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. So Jesus's remaining there is because he loves Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Okay, he doesn't have something else to do. He does it because he loves them. And how could that be a sign of his love? He does it because he knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And it is going to be a great act of love for the three of them to
Right.
show the power and glory of God through
Yes.
Lazarus. Okay.
And that's, yes, and that's where I think he, when I was looking
Again,
at
we don't know that.
11:4.
Okay.
I didn't hear you, Garnetta.
No, I was saying that that's what I was thinking when I was reading 11:4. 11:4, when Jesus heard that, he said, "This sickness is not unto death." So to me, he believed that he was never dead, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through him. That's how I saw this.
Okay. Well, when we talk about death in this story, there's going to be a little d and a capital D. Okay. Lazarus is going to die, little d, but it's not the ultimate death.
Right.
So, but remember, he says it's not going to end in death, because the end of the story is Lazarus being raised to life. Okay, that's why it's not going to end in death. So now it's really important when we go to the rest of the story, which unfortunately I'm not going to be, if you go with it next week, I'm not going to be there next week. But it's really important to know when you read the rest of the story that Jesus knows what he's going to do.
Yes.
Okay, so this is not any surprise to Jesus. Jesus is moving through this event knowing what is going to happen. All right, so he says, after 2 days, he says, now it's time to go back to Judea. And why is it time? Because Lazarus is dead. So now it's time to go back. Did anybody tell him Lazarus was dead? Was there a messenger that they had sent a message to say, come, he's ill, right?
Yeah.
A messenger saying he was dead?
No message
No.
came.
No, Jesus just knows it. Okay, another sign about Jesus. He just knows it. Nobody told him that Lazarus died. He knows it. Inserted in between that, you guys got that right on target, that, you know, the disciples are afraid, and Jesus says, look, you can either walk in the day or you can walk in the night. If you want to walk in the day, walk with me, because I'm the light of the world. Okay, so just trust me. You fear the darkness, but you don't need to fear the light of day. So hang out with me and things are going to be fine. So then he says, our friend Lazarus is asleep and I am going to awaken him. Okay, why is this such a typical Jesus statement in the Gospel of John?
To confuse everybody.
Well, he doesn't do it to confuse it, but I mean, that's not his point. But what do you always see in the Gospel of John? Jesus speaks at one level, right?
Yeah.
And everybody else understands him at a different level. Okay, so when Jesus says, our friend Lazarus is asleep and I'm going to awaken him, Jesus means Lazarus is going to die and I'm going to raise him from the dead. But the disciples hear it as, oh, he's just snoozing, which means, oh, if he's just snoozing, then Jesus will go and heal him and he will be saved, right? That's what they're referring to. And it's very interesting. The Greek word for saved, well, actually the Latin word as well, is the word that is also used to be healed. Okay, so if you go to the Latin, right, when you are saved, you have salvation, right?
Yes.
What is the word salve?
Save.
Save, salvation.
Salve. No, what's a salve?
Save.
S-A-L-V.
Oh, healing.
Salve.
A salve like you put on a wound or something?
Right, it's an ointment to heal.
Yeah.
Okay, so even in Latin and in our own language, there is this play that salvation and healing go together.
Go together.
Right. So the disciples are thinking, oh, if he's asleep, then he will be healed, right? When Jesus gets there. But of course, now John says, oh, for crying out loud, Jesus was talking about his death. And so Jesus now says to them clearly, Lazarus has died. And I'm glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. So what does that mean?
So his glory wouldn't have been revealed.
Right.
Yes, it's the same statement, right? Isn't it the same version of Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus, so he stayed for 2 days, right?
Days.
The same thing. He wants the disciples to see the glory of God, just like he wants Martha, Mary, and Lazarus to see the glory of God. But he could not be there before his death, because otherwise he would have been expected to heal him, and that healing would not show the glory of God in the way that raising him from the dead would show the glory of God.
You know, John is so complicated, or he is so deep. But one of the things, you know, it was written or published or revealed many, many, many years after all of these events took place. So John was old, and he had a chance to really think about what he was going to present. You know, if the scribes writing down what he was saying, but that would make sense, and that would cause us to really have to think and to believe. So he had plenty of years to think about the best and most effective presentation.
Exactly. No, that's why this gospel is so different from the other three, because it has really deep insights as it's telling the story, and insights that probably the first three gospel writers didn't have themselves, because it was too soon, you know, but they weren't around as long as John was. So that's exactly right, Gretchen. So then
But one thing is missing. Isn't there in one of the other gospels, it says how long Lazarus had been dead and that he had already begun to decay?
No, that's going to be in this story.
Oh, it is in here. Oh, okay.
All this story. This story is not in the other
gospels.
Three gospels. There is a reference in one of the gospels, I think it's Luke, that Jesus, well, he did raise some men from the dead, right? I mean, remember the widow and her only son, and they're carrying him out, and he raises him from the dead. And we'll get to that as to what the difference is between that and this. But anyway, it is much deeper. So John sets the story up that Jesus knows what he's going to do. It's all for the glory of God. And he's putting them through this so that the glory of God can be revealed.
Right.
Has anybody ever thought about that maybe I'm going through this struggle so that at the end of it, I will see the glory of God?
I was just kind of thinking of that even as we go through this, I was thinking that it says their faith, they began to believe. But for us, it's like through our progression of faith, there's going to be some frustration, just as we read through these encounters. But if you stick with it, you grow in that faith. And that's what I was getting out of this. And I'm really starting to enjoy this, but get it, that you got to stick with it.
So this story, just like the man born blind, the insight is just because you're going through bad news doesn't mean God is punishing you. Because at the end of the process, you might just see the glory of God, and what a gift from God that is to you. So
But
it's
also, I think.
wait, let me finish because it's
Okay, I'm
important.
sorry.
Not to say that God deliberately puts you through a tough time so that you will see the glory of God, right? Be very careful. God is not a sadist, right? God doesn't decide, oh, I know, I'm going to torture these people so that at the end they'll believe in my glory. No, but things may, just because bad things are happening doesn't mean that God is punishing.
Right.
That it may just well be that at the end of this bad thing, the glory of God will be revealed, and therefore we will come to a deeper faith in God than we had before.
And but
Right.
also, it doesn't set us up to be a witness to His glory like these people
Right,
are.
yeah, once you become the witness, you not only have a deeper faith, then you could go out and testify.
Just like Lori did on Sunday.
Exactly, exactly. So, right. So if you want to use Lori's thing, it's not that God made the tree fall right next to her and break her arms and not her head. You know, it's not that God did that. And it's not that God put her in a car accident. It's just that as she moved through these awful events, she saw the glory of God in her life. And now
Exactly.
she could testify to it. So that's really,
And honest, if you finish, 14 tells it all.
what's that?
14 tells it all. Verse 14.
That's what I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's something.
And it'll go on. There's more to it, but it's gonna right now. Let's end the prologue there. He throws in this little last thing about Thomas. Thomas is, you know, he's at the end of the story. Thomas is always like overreacting, and so that's just it just shows his personality. Didymus means the twin. Okay, so Thomas has a twin brother. We don't know who the twin brother is, but we know he is a twin. All right, so let's call that the break for today. And let me, how do I? There we go. Stop the recording.